I'm Professor Rad, and today we're going to talk about fractions in simplest form. So in some of the previous videos, we've seen that a fraction can be written in a couple different ways. For example, the fraction 2/4 is the same as 1/2. So what we're going to want to do is to find a consistent way to write our answers so that when you compare your answer to my answer, we can see really quickly that they're the same. So a fraction is going to be in simplest form, or sometimes we'll call that fraction a reduced fraction, if the numerator and the denominator have a greatest common factor of 1. In other words, when you look at the top number and the bottom number, they don't have any factors in common other than 1. So there's nothing that goes into both the top and the bottom other than 1, since 1 goes into everything. So I've got a few examples for us to work through here to figure out whether or not each fraction is in simplest form. So I'm going to work through part A a little bit differently than I would work through part B or C. And that's because when I look at fraction in part A, I'm noticing something that I don't notice right away in B and C. So if you know your multiplication table, then you might notice something about the fraction in part A. If you're not as familiar with your multiplication tables, that's okay. The method that we do for parts B and C are always going to work for part A as well, right? But what I'm noticing about part A, I've got the fraction 18/27ths, and I recognize that 18 and 27 are both multiples of 3. For example, 3 goes into 18 6 times, and 3 goes into 27 6 times. You might also have noticed that 9 is a factor of both 18 and 27, because 9 goes into 18 twice, and 9 goes into 27 3 times. So if you look at a fraction and you notice that the top and the bottom have a common factor that isn't 1, you know that this one is not in simplest form. So again, on this one, we know that because we know that 3 or 9 are factors of both the top and bottom numbers. But if you don't recognize that, how can you figure it out? So for example, if I look at the numbers 115 and 116, now these are much bigger numbers, and it's not immediately clear to me if they have any factors in common. So what I'm going to do is going to find the GCF. I'm going to find the greatest common factor of 115 and 116 to see if they have any factors other than 1. I'm going to need a little bit more space, so we're going to see this starting more often with fractions. We're going to bring in some scrap paper. So on my scrap paper, oh gosh, first I'm going to shake the screen all crazy like. Okay, so I'm going to start out by writing the 115. And I want to find factors of 115. So I'm going to get my friend the calculator here to help me out. And I know right away that 1 is going to work, right? Because 1 is a factor of everything. And then we'll just divide. So 115 divided by 2. That one doesn't work because we got a decimal. 3 doesn't work because we got a nice long decimal here. 4 doesn't work, we got a decimal again. Okay, 5 worked, and 5 was a factor 23 times. So I know that 5 and 23 are going to be factors of 115. And remember, when you're looking for factors, you're going to keep going until the answer you get is smaller than the number you divided by. So 23 is bigger than 5, so we're going to keep looking. So 6 doesn't work because we got a decimal. 7 doesn't work because we got a decimal. We'll try 8. That one doesn't work. 9 doesn't work. 10 Doesn't work either. Okay, and 11 didn't work. And now I know I can stop because the answer I got is smaller than what I divided by. So the only factors of 115 are 1, 5, 23, and 115. All right, so the denominator of this fraction was 116. So now we've got to find the factors of 116. So we'll start out 1 and 116 are factors because they're the same. Same idea, 1 goes into everything. All right, let's divide by 2, and we get 58. If I divide by 3, nope, that doesn't work. Let's try 4. Okay, 4 goes in 29 times. We'll try 5. Nope. 6. Broken. All right, and I'm just going to keep going through my list until I find some that work, or until my result is smaller than my divisor. Oh, some point I switched to 115. Oops. Let's try 116. Let's put the right number in here. Okay. 6. Nope. Glad I caught that. I was kind of on a roll there for a minute. Okay, and I can stop again when I got to 11 because my result was smaller. Okay, so it looks like these are the factors of 116 that we found. All right, great. So now I'm going to look at the lists of two numbers, and they both have a 1 in common. This one's got a 5, but this one doesn't. 23, nope. And 115. So the only two factors that 115 and 116 have in common are 1. So that means the greatest common factor of these two numbers is 1. So if the greatest common factor is 1, that means that it is in simplest form, or we would say it is reduced. So part B is in simplest form. Hooray! All right, and let's take a look at part C. So for part C, we're going to do the same technique that we used in part B. So we're going to list all the factors out for 76 and all the factors out for 95. So I'm going to encourage you to pause the video here and work through that, see if you can list all the factors. I'm going to do the same thing, and then we'll both unpause and we'll compare our answers. So I'll see you in a moment. All right, let's check our answers and see how we did. So for part C, when I found my factors of 76, I got 1 and 76, 2 and 38, 4 and 19, and that was it. When I checked 95, I got 1 and 95, and then 5 and 19, and that was it. So now that I've got my factors, I can see that 1 is certainly a common factor. It always will be. But I also notice that 19 is listed among both sets of factors. So that means the greatest common factor of 76 and 95 is 19. In other words, 19 goes into both 76 and 95, so we can simplify this fraction. So coming back to my example here, I would say this one is not in simplest form. And that's because the GCF was 19. Now, I'm going to show you on a few different calculators how you can use your calculator to simplify, and we'll use that as a check in several videos as we move forward. But we do also want to talk about a few different techniques for how to find the simplest form that aren't the calculator, because especially if you're heading into algebra, these techniques are going to be really important because we're going to generalize them, or we're going to move them into a broader space for some more complicated objects. So remember, in order to operate on objects, you want to understand them. So we need to make sure we understand this process. But we can go through using the calculator as a good way of checking our answer. So on this calculator, this is the TI-36X Pro. The way that I can enter a fraction is by using this button here. So it's got a box over a box. That's your fraction button. And when I press this button, you'll notice on the screen that it has a box over a box. So I can enter in, I'm going to do this first fraction here. I can enter this in by typing in the numerator. And then on this wheel of arrows, if I use the down arrow, it'll move to the denominator. And I can type in 27. Then I'm going to press this arrow key to move over. All I'm going to do to simplify is I'm going to press the enter button. That's the same button on here that I would press to hit equals. And this calculator will automatically simplify the fraction 18/27 into 2/3. What that means is 18/27 is not in simplest form. 2/3 is the simplest form. And if we were to draw out both these fractions, they would look the same. Let's look at a couple different calculators that do fractions a little bit differently than this one. So again, this one had this box over box button. I'm going to look at the TI-34 Multiview next. So this is the TI-34 Multiview. And this fraction doesn't have a box over box. It's got an N over D. Now, when I press N over D, it also sets up the boxes like the other calculator did. And I'm going to enter it the same way. I'm going to put the 18 in the top, and then I'll press the down arrow on the wheel, and I'll put 27 underneath. Then I'll hit over, and then I'll press enter, which on this one is in the same spot, right? It's the same as the equals button. So I'll press enter. And then this calculator does not simplify the fraction for me. However, it indicates to me that this fraction can be simplified. So you see this arrow here? That arrow means that this fraction can be simplified. So to simplify it on this calculator, I'm going to use this button that says simp. So it's for simplifying. So if I press that button now, it's saying you're going to take 18/27 and we're going to simplify it. And it gives me the fraction 6, is that 6/9? It's hard for me to tell from this angle. Yeah, 6/9. Okay, so two things happen here now. Once I've simplified on this fraction, it tells me, hey, what I did was I simplified by a factor of 3. In other words, this calculator was like, hey, that 18/27, 3 goes into both of those numbers. So I'm going to cut that out, and that'll reduce to 6/9. This arrow here means it can still be simplified further. So if I press the simp button again, and then I press enter, it now is going to simplify again by a factor of 3, since 3 goes into both 6 and 9, and it simplifies to 2/3. Now there is no arrow button, so that tells me that this is now as reduced as it can be. It is in simplest form. Now, if you don't like this feature on this calculator, if you want to be able to hit enter, be one and done, it's all totally simplified, you can change the mode. So if I go to the mode and I scroll down all the way, we've got ManSimp and AutoSimp. What this means is manually simplify or automatically simplify. So I'm going to press enter to select AutoSimp to automatically simplify. And then I'm going to press second mode to get out of this screen. And now I can try it again. So I'm going to enter in my fraction, 18/27. And now when I hit enter, it automatically simplifies to the 2/3. So if you want to see it worked out in steps, you want to have it in manual simplify mode. But if you want your fractions just to automatically be given in simplified form, which is what I prefer for my calculators, then you can put it in automatically simplify. All right, let's look at one more Texas Instrument calculator, but this one works a little bit differently. So this is a TI-30X2S. This is a calculator I use a lot in my statistics classes. So for this one, let's clear out the screen there. This one doesn't have box over box, and it doesn't have N over D. This calculator has an ABC button. If I press the ABC button, it's going to put this little, like, I don't know, corner looking thing. What that cornery looking thing is it separates a numerator and a denominator. So I'm going to clear that out. In order to enter this fraction, 18/27, I'm going to need to enter the numerator first. So I'm going to type in 18 first, then I press the ABC button, and then I'll type in the denominator of 27, and then I'll type enter or equals, and it has simplified the fraction. So now we can see this is going to be 2/3. So that's how these calculators each simplify the fractions. They're all a little bit different in how you enter fractions and all slightly different in what you might need to do to simplify. So again, we'll be reviewing that as we go through some by hand techniques to simplify fractions. But in the meantime, I've got a couple now you try problems. Just determine whether or not these fractions are in simplest form. And again, you can do that by finding is there a common factor or divisor between the top and bottom numbers? Or what is the GCF? Is the GCF 1 or not? All right, in our next video, we will go through the first of our several techniques of simplifying fractions. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now, everybody.